Welcome back to Fire Only. In this episode, I forgot to record game audio. But that's fine, because I'll be talking over it as I want to give a bit of a retrospective on the early story chapters, which in this video will be the story chapters from 1.0 all the way to 1.2. We finished the Bellabok chapter previously, so now we get to go to the Victoria housekeeping story. So I feel like I'm missing something. Right, the interlude with Zhuyan and Xingyi. I forget about that chapter all the time. In fact, I forget about it so badly that I even deleted the footage. Oh well, not much has happened for me to talk about anyways. We played a bit of DPS Xingyi, which wasn't a challenge, and there was this one cutscene. And that cutscene very much follows the rule of cool. I wanted to point that out. We're continuing on the main story, and this is going to be the story with Victoria housekeeping. I do remember that mission being quite fun with TV mode, so I'm going to switch to TV mode somewhere, if I remember how. I believe we should be able to enable it by... It's a good question, how do we enable this? It seems like TV mode has been entirely removed. Back in the day there was a switch to at least change it to TV mode, but it's no longer an option, from what I can tell. It was an option here. Maybe it's just unique for this quest, which would be weird because this is one of the best quests to play in TV mode. One of the nice things is, now that we have Panato, we can actually run around and not be incredibly slow. Why is Billy still standing there? Oh wait, it's because I'm recording on a widescreen. So the animation normally would be fine and the people would just be running off screen and Billy wouldn't be visible. But on widescreen, Billy is still just standing there. They didn't despawn the model.
Corin, the answer's obvious, isn't it? But forget that for now. Do you have anything I can use to kill time? My phone died.
I don't think
This is such a... Do you have games on your phone? Kind of waistline. I really think this is so funny. I really think they should have kept this particular quest as TV mode accessible. Because, well, yes, it was one of the longer ones, it was also one of the more enjoyable ones because it did some fun things with the lights that you don't really get to experience if you play it in this kind of mode. Like in the original array mode, you would have enemies that would go hidden in the dark and then you had to play around with the light. By comparison, having just a platformer section that is completely bright has a very different visual. They do at least have a little bit of a spy mission type of setup going on. It's better than nothing, but it certainly doesn't have the same vibe as the dark and kind of mysterious tone that the original TV mode had, because everything is so bright and visible. One of the things I do like about that cutscene is that at least you don't have that cliche of just making it barely in time. They, on purpose, subvert those expectations. Something I've noticed about the difference between Manato and Ben is that Ben has much better area of effect. Because of that, with groups of enemies like this, it might actually be faster to just use Ben as the main DPS. Before the chapter finale, we had to do the boss battle against Marionette, which I thought was going to be a little bit more difficult than I'm used to because you have to kill both of them roughly around the same time, but it ended up going very well. We took down the first Marionette shortly after the first stun, and I was worried it was not going to be enough damage. Oh no, we did get it. Okay, nice. The ultimate interrupted the revive. Zenless Zone Zero was the first gacha game I ever took seriously. I was encouraged to try it out by a friend, and the urban setting did appeal to me. And then during 1.0 there was enough of a hook for me to keep playing. Since then I've tried a couple more games in the genre as well, which would have never happened if I didn't enjoy Zenless Zone Zero. In fact, you wouldn't be seeing this video if that hook wasn't there. One of the things I've learned is most important for these live service games is that you need to feel excited about what's to come, whether that is story content, gameplay, or characters. That is the lens I approach these stories with, because yeah, you're not getting the greatest writing from these. I put it down to two criteria. I need to enjoy the story as I play through it, and two, I should be excited for the continuation of the story. The second point kind of requires the first to hold, but there have been games where I've enjoyed individual episodes of a story without caring too much about how the story continues. ZZZ 1.0 had both. You had all these factions with complementary characters having fun interactions with each other. Then there were the main characters, the proxies, who felt personable. Moreover, the pacing of the story felt pretty good. I was also interested in how the story would develop with the character progression of the main characters and the mystery of the sacrifices. I also wanted to see what future characters we would get in the story, as everything thus far had such a nice upbeat tone. And of course there was also the world that we would learn about, like about the Hollows. Playing through the story again, I'm reminded of the parts I enjoyed back then. But I also find myself missing the array mode for these missions. The new action missions are fine, but they have an issue that didn't really get better until all the way in 2.1, which is the environmental storytelling being very lacking. Array mode benefited a lot from the player being able to imagine the environments, because you had such an abstract representation of the environment, but without the TV arrays, you no longer had to imagine anything. Sure, the gameplay had its flaws, but it was more immersive and interactive than what replaced it. Especially what we just played in the Twin Tower missions. The vibe is completely different when it's these well-lit hallways with random fights in between. Now that we've completed the 1.0 story, we have the Jane intermission story next up. And after that we are heading to the Outer Ring. After that I went on to do a 10 pull on the standard banner. Let's see what we can get. Anby. That's Billy's signature. We are continuing on our journey with the 1.1 story now, which was the Jane investigation mission, where she went undercover in some kind of local gang in the Hollow. So I think we're playing Seth as DPS in this then, because Seth would be the worst DPS here. I don't think I've ever really used much of Seth. I know he has some combos to play. So it looks like you can hold his EX special, and then after his EX special move you can also hold your basic attack and it'll do a combo. I should remind you why I'm playing with Seth in this instance, not one of the other characters. It's because in the event that we have to play a stage with trial characters where we don't have access to a fire character, I'm supposed to be playing the worst possible DPS out of all of them, just to keep the challenge at least kind of different from how you would normally play it. And evidently Seth is the worst DPS in this instance. Then we had to verse against Jane using DPS Seth, which as you can imagine took a while, so I'm gonna fast forward a bit. Not playing it very well. I think in part because I'm not used to how long Seth's attack combos are, and that kind of messes with my dodge timings. After 3 minutes we finally beat Jane. I remember back when 1.1 first released, I was still very frugal about which characters I would pull for. So even though I liked Jane, I was thinking I would have to save up just so I can have more future characters in case there was somebody I'd like more. But nowadays I kind of regret that decision because she is still one of the best designs in the game in my opinion. The one thing that held me back on pulling for her was that her gameplay never felt too good for me. Her dodge gameplay never felt quite right. It always felt a little bit floaty in her animations. But when you look at the design, it's still just a character that would be nice to have on the account. But obviously that's not happening on Fire Only. I might have to pull for her on my main account at some point. After having a relatively easy time with DPS Jane, we were preparing to go for the final boss where we would have to play DPS Seth again. I did want to point out this Resonium, which is odd that this story is the only main story chapter that's ever done anything with Resoniums. Now, the boss didn't end up giving me some trouble, in part because this is the first boss that actually deals damage, but also because I was a little bit too focused on playing the optimal damage combos of Seth and taking too many hits in the process. Now, I put a transition there, but for me this fight has been going on for about 8 minutes. And I was practically at 1 HP at this point, so I had to really focus and try and make sure I don't get hit once more. But in the end, it was not enough. My second attempt I stopped pretty early, and then on my third attempt I did finally get it, but it took a while. This is still from the 1.x kind of like early season 1. All of the agents didn't have very good iframes just yet for their skills, so you can see with Seth, you'd think going for like an hold EX special, you'd expect him to have some iframes so he doesn't take too much damage during it. But no, he just takes full on damage. Maybe a slight damage reduction, but it's not great. Oh, apparently has a really high interrupt value on his EX special. I think I need to focus on just dodging and not actually getting his combos in, because it seems like I'm taking more damage than I can dish with optimal damage output. I think I have it figured out, because if you have his old EX special, so you charge it for a while, that move gets a lot of interrupt value, and from there you can more easily do his enhanced basic. Like, Seth does have decent-ish iframes, like he has in his basic. If he's in the air he has iframes. It seems like his EX special also has iframes. It's mainly his hold basic afterwards where he doesn't have iframes. And you also have to be careful when you do your basic attacks that you don't accidentally enter the ground right as you get attacked. Finally, after a 9.5 minute fight and 20 minutes total, we got to our final stun. Okay, finally. Now that was thankfully the last we're gonna see of DPS Seth this series, but surely he's the worst DPS I'll be playing, right? My overall thoughts on this Jane special mission is that it was fine. I'm still a bit surprised by the game doing what is practically a filler episode right after its launch. I thought they'd try to keep the momentum going, but it was fine. While it didn't really move the story forward at all, I did appreciate how it presented Jane as a character. In particular, I liked how we got to see her interact with the world without it revolving around our player character. I wish we got to see that more in ZZZ. It should tell us when we're finished with the Jane story, right? Or are we just going directly into the Outer Ring story? I think this is where we started the Outer Ring story, so I'm gonna take a quick break for myself and then we'll continue.